Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can learn about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, we've got a really important guest for you today, and one whose work is literally changing the direction of our planet. Wes Carter is the president and third generation leader of Atlantic Packaging, which is the largest privately held packaging company in North America. And he is the founder of A New Earth Project. And you can find out more about Wes Carter and his important work at his website, anewearthproject.com. Welcome, Wes Carter.
Thank you, Catherine. It is lovely to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
So, Wes Carter, what exactly is A New Earth Project?
So, A New Earth Project is the sustainability initiative of our company, Atlantic Packaging. And as you mentioned in the introduction, Atlantic Packaging is today the largest privately held industrial packaging company in North America. We support the packaging needs of companies of all shapes and sizes in pretty much every industry vertical, whether it's food, beverage, building products, medical device, automotive, e-commerce. Really anybody making and shipping anything are potential customers of ours. And I launched a sustainability initiative several years ago that I coined A New Earth Project, which is really with the mission to rid the world's ocean, lakes, and rivers of plastic pollution by turning off the tap of a lot of those products within the supply chain. And as a large packaging company that supports the packaging needs of all these large consumer products companies and retail brands, I felt like Atlantic was in a really good position to usher in what I call the sustainable revolution, which is really about innovating new materials that are more circular in nature, that are more natural, have a more favorable end of life than a lot of the traditional packaging items, single-use plastic being a big target, obviously.
So, Wes Carter, as I was preparing for our interview today, I reflected on my own life. And there's literally no part of my day that doesn't involve plastic. From when I get up and I eat yogurt out of a tub, I put lipstick in a plastic out of a plastic tube. I put moisturizer on my face. I just took amino acids that came in a plastic tub. Many of us in natural healing do protein powders that come in a plastic tub. And your company was started by your grandfather. How has packaging changed to become healthier for us and the planet?
Yeah, our company was founded by my grandfather, Horace Carter, in 1946, and we have a really unique history. My grandfather actually started our company as a weekly newspaper, and that weekly newspaper won a Pulitzer Prize for meritorious public service in 1952, because my grandfather, at a very young age, used his newspaper to fight the Ku Klux Klan in southeastern North Carolina. It's a really amazing a documentary called The Editor and the Dragon that's narrated by Morgan Freeman that's all about my grandfather's story, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. Without going into the great details of that story, the foundations of our company were a lot about doing the right thing, and even in the face of an enormous challenge, doing the right thing, doing it with integrity and honesty. And I like to believe that today our company is, we were founded fighting for civil rights, and today we're fighting for environmental rights. And I feel like there's a really good synchronicity with my life and my grandfather's life. The only difference is no one's trying to kill me. And when he was waging his war against the Klan, he had death threats and all kinds of other awful things happening to him. But to answer your specific question, like I said, the ethics and business ethics have always been a big part of our organization. And when we look at the modern packaging industry, and really just not even in packaging, just all over our world, as you referenced. I mean, we're surrounded by plastic. And some of that is because over the last 50 or 60 years, trillions of dollars have gone into research and development for this material. One of the reasons ubiquitous is because there's been so much investment in the expansion of plastic and plastic applications, everything from cell phones and computers and cars to packaging. I certainly don't believe that all plastic is bad. I think there's certain areas of our world where plastic is an absolute miracle. I just believe that in areas like single-use packaging, it is really problematic for a variety of reasons. And so what we're doing as an organization is looking at the applications that have the most likelihood to end up in the environment. As an example, over the last 10 years, e-commerce has absolutely exploded. I mean, and during COVID, there was a huge catalyst for direct to consumer shipments. And so every human being that and I know got more packaging to their home than under any other scenario. So we also know that studies tell us that about 8% of what ends up at your house ends up in the environment, that we call it leakage. And so what we've tried to do as an organization and say, all right, where in direct to consumer packaging are we utilizing a lot of single-use plastic that could potentially be innovated into more environmentally friendly? So again, we're looking really at the application itself, what part of the supply chain the packaging material flows through, and try to figure out, do we have better scenarios? So the example of e-commerce, when you're looking at parcel packaging that's coming to your house or to a business, you've got a lot of protective packaging, things like air pillows or bubble wrap or EPS or EPE foam. We've got a lot of natural cushioning materials made from paper primarily that are great drop-in replacements for those products. Those things have been innovated a lot over the last 20 years. So as an example, migrating away from a lot of those single-use products to what I call fiber-based packaging is a very easy thing to do right now. The nice thing too is fiber-based packaging is recyclable pretty much everywhere. Every blue bin program in the United States recycles paper really, really well. And part of that's because there's a demand for recycled fiber. The paper companies won those products back. So there's an economic driver for recycling of paper. And also we know, obviously, if some of that paper ends up in that 8% that ends up in the environment, well, it breaks down relatively quickly and returns back to natural form. So we talk a lot about in packaging, we want to create closed loops. So we can either close the loop by recycling the product, or we can close the loop by composting, or basically it going back into the earth, and the earth is closing the loop for us. So in packaging, we are looking at a lot of single-use products that end up in the hands of consumers as the primary area where we believe plastic is really problematic. And it's not super, you got a lot of applications like direct food contact where plastic is providing potentially shelf life or food safety requirements. And so those are things you have to take into account as well. And then there's a lot of other areas of packaging where plastic is being utilized in between businesses. So you think about business shipping big pallets of goods that are wrapped in stretch film. Not a lot of that's ending up at people's homes. Not a lot of that's ending up in the environment. But it's certainly a product that we can create better circularity. So as a company that sells a lot of that type of material, we're working on how do we recover used packaging between businesses and recycle that as well. So ultimately, we're looking at the whole packaging universe and trying to create closed loop systems, which basically means we're before it ends up in the environment, before it ends up in the landfill, and try to recycle it or compost it so it has a better end of life scenario.
So very important work that you're doing. Now, here we are at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, where on our show, we talk about what we can do to be healthy naturally. Now, I'm going to share some information that a lot of people don't know. Scientists have estimated that the average person eats about 5 grams of microplastics per week, which is basically the weight of a credit card. Now, what are microplastics? Microplastics are defined as plastic pieces less than 5 millimeters across. And they've been found in placenta, they've been found in newborn babies, they've been found in human blood. So we have to understand that plastic does not biodegrade. It ends up being broken down into smaller pieces and ends up everywhere, including in the food chain. So we talked about every week, the average person eats about 5 grams of shredded plastic. Every month, that works out to roughly, scientists estimate 21 grams of shredded plastic, about the amount to fill half a rice bowl. And every 6 months, we consume about 125 grams of plastic, about the amount to fill a cereal bowl. I was shocked to read some of these statistics. Every year, we consume about 250 grams, about the amount to fill a dinner plate. Well, now, how is all of this plastic affecting our health? Well, one of the things that we know is these plastic fibers have a big problem, especially in the lungs, causing damage, including inflammation in our lungs. And again, it can go into the womb, causing increased risk of prematurity, stillbirth, birth defects of the reproductive organs, neurodevelopmental impairment, impaired lung growth, and childhood cancer. So there's no doubt that in addition to being an eyesore, in addition to causing problems in the ocean, all this plastic is absolutely affecting our health. So what's interesting, Wes Carter, my grandfather, we talked about your grandfather, who sounded like an incredible human being. My grandfather was a scientist and an inventor. He worked for over 50 years for the DuPont company, and their motto was better living through chemistry. Better living through chemistry. So when we look at my grandfather's generation, you know, they all thought that they were doing the planet a favor by creating all of this plastic. So, Wes Carter, how and why did you start a New Earth project?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I will say too about what you're referencing there, when plastics first hit the market, you know, in the 1960s and then really exploded in the 70s and 80s, it was a revolution. I mean, I think that's important for us in the modern age to realize that, like, prior to that, you know, there was plastics presented convenience and efficiency at a level the world had never seen. And if you were alive during that time, especially like your grandfather working for DuPont, it was probably incredibly exciting. You thought material that would solve all the world's problems. And that's why trillions of dollars went into developing all these plastic products over decades and decades. But you know, what has happened over the last 20 or 30 years is it's been really myopic. I mean, we have not been acknowledging the impact of this progress. And so what we're trying to do today is really, first and foremost, be really honest and say, hey, you know, none of us in packaging set out to pollute the world. That was not, you know, just like Henry Ford didn't set out to pollute the air when he invented the automobile. Like, that was not the point. But it was an unintended consequence of industrial progress. And in a world today where we're so much more connected, we can share ideas, we can collaborate on a level we've never been able to before. One of the first things I think we have to do is acknowledge that we have a real problem. And I know this is a show about health, and I'm sure you would acknowledge that, you know, the first thing you do when you have any disease in your body is you have to figure out what's going on. Like, there's an acknowledgement of something is wrong, and we have to create awareness around the problem. So to me, that's a big thing that the packaging industry has not done a great job of historically. It's been sort of like a blind spot, you know, an intentional blind spot that was really ugly that we just weren't looking at. And so what I've tried to do with the New Earth Project is say, hey guys, we can no longer keep our heads buried in the sand. And this problem of plastic pollution and also just the proliferation of plastic in all these applications where it probably shouldn't be, where it could be negatively impacting human health and the health of a lot of other life as well. You know, we have to begin to acknowledge that the only way to solve this problem is within the supply chain. And to the point you made earlier, like, no, everyday human beings are surrounded by plastic. And what I don't think is very productive is pointing fingers at individual people and saying, oh, you shouldn't be buying that product, and this sort of virtue shaming that everybody has to change all of their behaviors. Like, first of all, that's not very efficient. And the likelihood that that has a real impact in the world is pretty limited. What has to happen is the organizations, the companies within the supply chain have to move away from these products and make it much easier on consumers to make better choices. Right now, that's pretty limited. You know, it's getting better all the time, and innovation is a big piece of that. But a New Earth project, outdoor person. I grew up in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. I grew up with salt water as the backdrop to my life, surfing and fishing and spending time on boats. I've also just always loved the mountains. I lived in Park City, Utah for a long time. I was a Boy Scout as a kid, hiked the Appalachian Trail. And, you know, as I got older in my business, I just realized that the supply chain, the packaging supply chain that I was a part of was having a really negative impact on all of these beautiful ecosystems that I love to spend time in. And as I was mentioning, there was this realization that if the supply chain doesn't change, these problems are not going to get better. They're actually going to get way worse. And so I was trying to figure out what would be a catalyst for this. Like, if in order to make sustainability really happen, it has to be engaging. We have to make it something that organizations want to do. It has to be something to celebrate. And so the idea I had was, if I was looking at companies that we support from a packaging perspective, what better vertical to lead the sustainable packaging revolution than the outdoor industry? You know, in the grand scheme of industries, it's not as big as a lot of the other industries we support, like the beverage industry or the building products industry. The outdoor industry is an industry that I have great passion for because I used to work selling skis and snowboards and mountain bikes 20 years ago, and I know that industry. So the idea was, let's take the technical resources of Atlantic Packaging, and we have quite a few of them. Let's approach a lot of these outdoor brands and say, we will help you transition all of your packaging to earth-friendly, sustainable packaging, eliminate a lot of this single-use plastic, and our only ask is, let us tell your stories along the way. Let us interview your elite athletes and let's get their perspectives on sustainability. And let's begin to make packaging a brand attribute where when someone gets a product from your outdoor company, they know instantly what your environmental ethics are. They can see it in the way you package your products. We'll make it thoughtful, you know. And so we started with surfing the very first year of a New Earth project. We innovated the first ever surfboard shipping system that was plastic free, fully curbside recyclable. And ultimately, a surfboard was just a widget. It was just a way to show that, hey, we can take a product that's traditionally been wrapped in bubble wrap and foam and plastic tape and make it very appealing to the consumer. We can protect it during shipping. We can reduce the shipping costs. We can make it easier to pack, fully sustainable. And so we created a documentary series called Journey to a New Earth that you can watch on Amazon Prime that really documented that transition from a non-sustainable packaging system to a sustainable packaging system. And then along the way, we interviewed a lot of famous surfers like Kelly Slater and Carissa Moore and Koa Smith and Kai Lenny. And, you know, that basically helped us brand sustainable packaging as cool, you know, if these famous surfers are really into this. And so with the ultimate goal of influencing a lot of other companies to do the same. So over the last year, we've been working a lot in the snow industry with companies like Atomic Skis and Burton Snowboards, while also working with a lot of traditional companies that we work with, you know, big companies, you know, that we work with that are not in the outdoor industry that are taking notice of what we're doing here. But a New Earth project was what I coined it, and the reason for that is I had just finished reading Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, and that book blew my mind. And I really do believe that this awakening to the fact that the most sacred thing on this planet is life itself and of the human story, and I believe packaging can be emblematic of this massive global shift back in the direction of life. Packaging is a pretty good thing to start with. It's ubiquitous. It's tangible. It's not like climate change that's a little hard to comprehend. Packaging is pretty easy for people to see that shift. And my hope is if we can catalyze a global shift away from problematic packaging to more earth-friendly packaging, that it can be a rallying cry around the world that if we can solve this problem by collaborating and innovating in the direction of life, we can do that with a lot of these other global issues as well. So to me, this is a spiritual mission in many ways.
Beautiful information. And with that, let's take a break and listen to one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. We're listening to Wes Carter, the founder of A New Earth Project, and we're talking about the health effects of all this plastic. We'll be right back. Wes Carter, one of the things that we talk about here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio is that our environment is the most powerful factor. So whether it's your home environment or your work environment or the environment that you live in. For example, in my little garden club, so many members have gotten cancer because they're using toxic chemicals in their garden, whereas my garden has been organic for probably 25 years because I'm not using toxic chemicals. And one of the things that we know is that all this plastic is affecting global warming. So as the founder of A New Earth Project, what can you share with our audience about how plastic affects global warming?
Well, as we mentioned before, anytime you're converting fossil fuels into a product, you're going to have a pretty sizable carbon footprint. And ultimately, these products don't break down either, so we can't create circularity. But the plastics industry has a large carbon footprint. The packaging industry in general has a large carbon footprint. And so I don't know that it's specific to plastic when it comes to global warming, but certainly when we look at all of these materials that we're utilizing across the supply chain, we have to find ways to be able to produce these products with less carbon. One of the nice things about using things like trees as a feedstock is you have a product that's absorbing carbon as it grows. So that's always a better situation where we can, grow products to create, packaging or other type of products and offset some of the carbon in those ways. And certainly there's a lot of strategies around sustainable forestry and sustainable farming, and feedstocks are really, really important. But just because of the massive, nature of the plastics industry and the fact that the feedstock fuels, you have a pretty significant carbon footprint.
Now, Wes Carter, founder of A New Earth Project, how do plastic affect fish in our oceans?
Well, we've all seen the pictures. So much of these products end up in the ocean, quite honestly, because even if people discard them as litter on land, when it rains, these products find their ways to creeks, and those creeks find their way to rivers, and those rivers find their way to oceans. And once these products get into the ocean, they're almost impossible to collect. There are companies out there like the Ocean Cleanup and Boyan Slat, who's the founder of the Ocean Cleanup, and he's been pretty well recognized around the world. They've created some really neat innovations for capturing plastic before it flows into the ocean. with these interceptor ships that they install in rivers, and they've got other ships out there on the Pacific garbage patch collecting plastic. However, you mentioned microplastics earlier. Once it enters the ocean, so often this product turns into microplastics, which are virtually impossible to collect. And there is a lot of evidence that it's having a huge detrimental impact on aquatic life. It chokes coral reefs. You have all different types and aquatic animals that swallow these plastics, that choke on these plastics. I read an article just last week of another humpback whale that washed ashore with a belly full of plastic. And as you can imagine, a lot of bags underwater look like jellyfish, and a lot of these animals feed on jellyfish. You've got a lot of aquatic birds that choke on these products as well. And so, like I mentioned earlier, if we can acknowledge that all life is sacred, we should truly care that human beings are poisoning all these other life forms. And the oceans are a critical part of human health. I mean, if the oceans die, humans are in big trouble, big trouble. And so it is, to me, it's a really critical thing that we have to solve. And the quickest way to solve it, in my opinion, is to turn off the tap. If we can transition away from a lot of these products, so knowing that some of them are going to end up in the ocean, but if they end up in the ocean and they break down in a reasonable amount of time and they're naturally based, it's a lot better scenario. But the studies show that in the coming years, there's estimates in the ocean than fish, and to me, that is just a travesty beyond travesties. And we as human beings have a moral obligation, a spiritual obligation to correct this.
And Wes
that's
Carter,
the
there
mission.
was a little technical glitch. Could you please repeat what you just said?
From which part?
You
Where do you want
said
me to go?
that there's now going to be more something in the ocean than fish.
Well, yes. Right now we know that about half of the plastic that leaks into the ocean is packaging, and it is growing exponentially. It is growing exponentially. So estimates are by 2040 there could be as much as 36 million tons of plastic going into the oceans every single year.
Oh.
36 million tons every single year, which is about triple the rate right now. And I think that's the other thing that people don't recognize is it feels like, oh, well, we're not using as many plastic straws. And I noticed that there's not as much plastic coming to my house. There is still an exorbitant amount leaching into the environment. And so we are just getting started. But the current estimates are change. Over the next decade, there'll be more plastic in the oceans by weight than there are fish. And to me, that's just a travesty beyond all travesties. And my goal is to just help people wake up and say, we have a moral and spiritual obligation to correct this problem. And it is a very correctable problem. I mean, that's the other thing that really inspires me to do this work is, there's a lot of big global issues that I'm not sure how to solve, but this one we can fix. And we do that by transitioning the supply chain to more environmentally friendly packaging. We do that by engaging with brands of all shapes and sizes and getting them to agree that sustainability is something that we want to do. And then the biggest factor is everyday consumers. We need everyday human beings demanding sustainable materials, demanding sustainable packaging, and rewarding the companies that make these shifts and not shopping with companies that don't. My perspective is that especially consumers under the age of 40, sustainability is a brand attribute they are looking for. I mean, studies show that sustainability to young people is more important than brand. What I tell a lot of our customers is if you want to appeal to the largest demographic of consumers in the world, sustainability is at the top of the list. And so, those perspectives and that realization is beginning to take root. And it gives me a lot of hope, but we also have a lot of work to do.
So really important information. And with that, let's take another break and listen to one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. We're listening to Wes Carter, founder of A New Earth Project. We'll be right back. So Wes Carter, founder of A New Earth Project. So many of us who listen to the Natural Healing Show at UK Health Radio, we're very health conscious. We think about what we eat, we think about how we exercise, we think about getting enough rest. And yet many of us are not aware of how all these microplastics are affecting our health. So we talked about how every week the average human ingest the equivalent of the weight of a credit card in microplastics, which are these tiny little bits of shredded plastics. One of the things that scientists have made us aware of is that microplastics don't just leach nasty chemicals, they actually attract them. And there's something called persistent bioaccumulative and toxic substances. I'll say that again. Persistent bioaccumulative and toxic substances, or PBTs. And they're a hodgepodge of compounds, including DDT and PCBs. So these are found in the plastics. So one of the things that we know, according to the US Environmental Protection Agency, that plastics and all this microplastic that we're ingesting is like a magnet and attracts more of these persistent bioaccumulative and toxic substances. So let's talk about the average person. So I think about myself. I work out of my house. I drive a hybrid car. I recycle. I have an organic garden. I have a compost pile. What can the average person do to reduce the amount of plastic they use?
Yeah, I mean, the studies are being really ramped up right now on the impacts of plastics in human health. And as you referenced, it's not just the chemicals that are used in producing plastic, but we now know that plastics act as almost like a carrier for a lot of these chemicals. And many of these chemicals are really nasty. I mean, endocrine disruptors. They can create hormonal issues. There's a lot of these, forever chemicals you've heard folks talking about have been, connected to cancer and a lot of other nasty diseases. And quite honestly, I believe we're just starting to scratch the surface on what the real impacts of a lot of these products are. Now, I do think it is application specific. I'm not too worried about the board of my car or the plastic in my laptop computer. But when you start to think about plastics that carry liquids that you might ingest or that touch food or that are utilized in the production of food, coatings on things like pots and pans, something that might go in a microwave, I think those are the areas that we got to be really, really conscious of. So just in my life alone, I don't drink out of PET bottles anymore unless I absolutely have to. There's a lot of studies that just came out in the last couple of weeks about nanoplastics, where we now have the technology to look at the liquids that are in a lot of these, water bottles and soft drink bottles. And what we're finding is there's a lot more plastic in there than we originally understood. And so, there's, as you can see, like I'm drinking out of a glass jar right now. Glass is a great substrate, for carrying liquids. And so everywhere in our lives that we can get away from a lot of these single-use plastics that are touching food, that's where I'm the most focused. And just being more and more conscious about, especially things that you're adding, plastics that go into a microwave where those chemicals could potentially get into your food is something that we have to be careful of. And then there's other areas, where, if I go to the hospital and I need an IV, the fact that the IV fluid is in a plastic bag, again, I'm not as concerned with right now. But a lot of these studies are ongoing. So, I do believe a lot more information will come out in the coming years.
No, one of the things that I'm always talking to my clients about is do not use a microwave to cook, reheat, or touch anything that goes into your mouth.
Yeah.
And I've had so many clients. I've had clients with stage 4 cancer. They go buy expensive organic fruits and vegetables. They come home and microwave it. And I have a whole handout that I give out to people about why they should not microwave their food. But in summary, everything that's alive, the cells spin in a clockwise direction. And when you microwave food, it reverses the spin of the molecules, driving toxins deeper into your cells. So then you think about microwaving your food, and then you're driving plastic deeper into your cells. So scientific research shows that even eating microwave vegetables will raise your cholesterol. So a really simple thing to do to reduce plastic is don't buy any food that needs to be cooked in a microwave. I always tell everybody, cook the way your grandmother cooked, in a stove, in the oven, right?
Well, yeah, and ultimately, now I live out in the country now, but I think more and more people, especially on the backside of COVID, are kind of doing the modern day homesteading, and putting a garden in their backyard, or at least, trying to go to their local farmers market. And quite honestly, I found a lot of just personal benefit from digging in the dirt every day, and like taking care of a garden. There's something that's really satisfying about growing your own food, and there's something really satisfying about shopping local, and not just for fruits and vegetables too. I mean, we try to buy local meats and organically raised and pasture raised, humanely raised animal if you're going to eat animal protein. And I do believe more and more people are waking up to the fact that they can live a healthier life when they eat food that's grown closer to home and try to stay away of the factory farmed things. And if you do that, you can eliminate a lot of plastic, because so much plastic is coming from, food that's made in an industrial type facility, where things have to be packaged in plastic because they're going to be on a shelf for weeks at a time, or they're going to be on a truck or in a warehouse. And if it comes from your backyard or the farm down the street, that's not the case. So I think it's really not about doing a whole lot different other than returning to a way things used to be. So like you said, returning to the way your grandparents would have eaten. And I always love looking at these old films from like the 1940s and 1950s, and everybody looks really thin and fit. And I really think that had a lot to do with the food supply.
For sure. There is no question about it. Just what you're eating, right? And so we're talking today here at the Natural Healing Show about plastic and how plastic affects your health, because so many of us are, very detail oriented about so many aspects of our health. We wear fitness monitors to monitor so much, and then we come home and we put our food in the microwave out of a plastic container and eat it, or as you said, drink out of plastic water bottles and think that's, we're doing ourselves a lot of favors. So Wes Carter, founder of A New Earth Project, what is single-use plastic, and what can each of us do to reduce or eliminate it?
Yeah, I mean, single-use plastic is any plastic material that's used one time and then discarded. And once you start to have some consciousness around those products, it's pretty easy to start to go, what, this makes no sense. I'm going to use this product for about 10 seconds and then I'm going to discard it. And by the way, it's not going to break down for 1,000 years. And it just logically doesn't make sense. Why would we use a product for seconds or minutes for it to stay on this planet for thousands of years? It's just nonsensical. And like I said before, because there's been so much investment in plastic production and plastic innovation, we just found a way to innovate plastics for all these different applications when we were only focused on cost and convenience. That was it. And so all of a sudden we have to wake up and go, oh, wait a minute, cost and convenience can't be the only two things that we're evaluating. As your show talks about, health needs to be a big of human beings and the health of our natural environment, because they're all tied together. And so, when we're looking at, products that you can be really aware of, certainly when you're looking, like I mentioned before, parcel shipments, things like bubble wrap, foam coolers, air pillows, all of that type of single-use plastic that's, a product's going to get shipped to your house. That plastic's going to be used one time and discarded. Those are areas we want to avoid as much as we can. When you're shopping at the grocery store, it gets a little trickier. But anytime you can look for products that are fresh products that can be wrapped in paper, that don't require plastic, that's a good place as well. And then one of the biggest areas of plastic pollution is beverage containers. A lot of beverage containers get used one time, and those things fly out of cars and they fly out of boats. And so we all need to get beverages on the go. When I have to buy a beverage on the go, I'm always trying to buy something out of an aluminum can. Aluminum does break down. It still takes a while. I mean, aluminum, studies show about 80 years, but it's better than 1,000. And also, aluminum is infinitely recyclable. So that's one of the real advantages of utilizing aluminum, is it just can be recycled over and over and over again. So it's really just about being more conscious of areas in buy products that don't come in plastic. And other areas, obviously, shopping bags. If we can utilize reusable shopping bags. Just being more conscious of those products. But ultimately, if it's plastic and you're going to use it one time and throw it away, you're better off to find an alternative. And another one that I've used a lot is I always carry a reusable coffee mug. And most every coffee shop these days will fill up your coffee mug with coffee without having to use one of their takeaway containers. So it's really not rocket science. It's probably why I'm in packaging. It's you don't have to be brilliant to figure this stuff out.
Well, this is really great information, because again, so many of us in natural healing, we think we're doing a really good job of being healthy, but we have a blind spot about how much all this plastic is actually affecting our total health and well-being. Now, Wes Carter, you are the president and third generation leader of Atlantic Packaging, the largest privately held packaging company in North America. Here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, we have listeners all over the world. Are other packaging companies all over the world following your lead and raising awareness about getting out of plastic?
Yeah, the sustainable revolution is really starting to take root and gain some momentum. Ultimately, in order to solve this problem, it has to be about radical collaboration. I mean, there's no way that Atlantic Packaging can do this on our own. And our hope is really to build coalitions, build coalitions of companies, of like-minded organizations. One of the really unique things that's happening in our industry, and this is happening globally, is there's a lot of really intelligent people, really smart people that are getting into packaging that historically probably wouldn't have gotten into our industry. But because of the plastic pollution crisis, because of the environmental awareness that young people have, we have some of the most talented folks in the world that are deciding to get into the alternative materials industry. And so whether that's developing plastics from things like hemp, or grass, or there's a big movement around seaweed, using seaweed as a feedstock, and I think that has a lot of promise. We've also got organizations that are making foam replacements out of things like shrimp shells or mycelium. Mushroom packaging is getting a lot of attention right now, and so these innovations are the world. And one of the things we're trying to do at Atlantic is embrace these often small startup companies who have a really cool sustainable technology, and help those organizations scale their technology with all of the testing and validation that we have internal to Atlantic. We have a big packaging solution center in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we do a lot of this package development, testing, and verification, making sure it's ready for market. And so we're bringing a lot of new alternative materials into the marketplace. And then because we have lots of historic customers, and all these different verticals that buy these products at scale. Once we have a viable new alternative material, we're introducing it to companies that can purchase those products at a significant scale. So my hope is it's what I call activating the innovators. All this new brain power coming into our industry, Atlantic is trying to activate those innovations and get them out there into the world. And that's something I really believe can be the future. One of the latest innovations, we worked with a company called Cruz Foam out of Santa Cruz, California, founded by a guy named John Feltz, that's created a foam, a traditional plastic foam replacement that's being manufactured from food waste product. And we created a cold chain shipping system called the Cruz Cool C that recently won Time Magazine's Sustainable Innovation of the Year. And if you go to anewearthproject.com and go to our shop, you can see that cooler there. But that cooler is fully curbside recyclable and fully compostable. And we're super stoked about that innovation. So we're working on a lot of other products as well. And ultimately, I think that is the answer.
So Wes Carter, founder of A New Earth Project, any final thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that for me, my journey with health and wellness was directly influenced all that I'm doing right now. I don't know that if I had not have gotten on the path to health and wellness, that all of this would have occurred to me. And so I think the awakening that I had is not unique to me. I think anyone in any walk of life, once you come to the understanding that all good things flow from health, and health has to be foundational for everything in life. And if we want to heal the planet, we have to heal the human beings. And as I worked on my own healing journey, learning how my professional work became very obvious. And so I think one of the greatest commitments people can make is to their own health and well-being, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. And I believe if every human being really committed to that path, how to solve these great problems around the world will become really, really obvious. And so that's what I would encourage everybody to do. Just see where in your life you can integrate health, and reach out to like-minded people and find ways to collaborate. Because ultimately, in order to save this planet and save the human beings, it's going to require all of us working together. Yeah, that would be my piece of advice.
Very powerful message. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been the one and only Wes Carter, talking about his world-changing work as president and leader of Atlantic Packaging and founder of A New Earth Project. And you can get on board with A New Earth Project at their website, www.anewearthproject.com. And remember, whether you realize it or not, plastic is affecting your health all day long, every day. And as you become more aware of the effects of plastic on your personal health, you can make different choices that help you be healthier and the planet cleaner. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.